Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to SSG Speaks, the podcast that takes you inside the walls of Camelot. Meet the knights that made Sword and Shield gaming what it is. So pour yourself a flask of your favorite mead and join us for an inside look at the fine folks that sit at the round table.
Everybody, welcome to SSG Speaks. This is going to be episode 3 with our very own SimianChaos.
That is so hard to call you that. Also known as Code Monkey. I know.
Code Monkey, yes.
That's not even the earliest one.
Yeah, right. When you joined the Discord for the Suns a while back, I'm like, who the hell is this Simian guy? He's super active and I like him. I don't know who he is. Didn't realize it was you.
The avatar gave it away for me, so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is. I think it's a rite of passage for most people that they're going to go through a couple of gamertag changes. Obviously, Remy, we've talked about that with you, but
yeah, we'll wait till my episode to recap all those.
yeah, there you go. But Code or Simian, can you go through your lineage of gamertags with us, or or all your handles for maybe some of the milestone ones or the ones you like the most?
Well, I mean, I've gone through them all a lot, mainly because I never really tied my identity to my gamer tag, so it never felt like I owned it. So after a while, it's like, I feel like a change. So I think one of the first ones back when everyone was still back on the TTL forums and looking for groups, my gamer tag then was SSG76. And that kind of originated from the fact that I grew up outside the United States on a small island called Kwajalein. So,
really?
Where is that at?
It's in the Marshall Islands. So it's about, if you drew a line between Hawaii and Australia, it'd be about halfway in between. So,
I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. Was it awesome?
Yeah.
Did not know that about you.
Growing up, it's a little 3-mile long island. It's a U.S. military base. It's where they test their ICBM missiles. So back in the 80s, there was a treaty with Russia and whatnot, and that was the only allowed ICBM test range. So they fire missiles from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California out to there, and it's the world's largest atoll, so they've got the U.S. leases the islands, and they've got radar installations to track accuracy of missiles. And I lived out there because my father was a radar engineer, so he was working on one of the radars, and so our whole family was out there. It's like living in a small town in a tropical climate. So
yeah, that's kind of crazy. It sounds like a plot for like a video game.
Yeah,
like a Just Cause game or Far Cry or something like that.
So, at one point I was changing my gamer tag, and I was like, let's go with that. That sounds somewhat related to me, and let's pick something that I can remember.
There you go. I think when I met you, as far as I can remember, it was always Code Monkey that I can remember.
Yeah, same. I think you had Code Monkey when we were in the TTL forums, when we were in the Allies for the Win.
Yeah, I think I had switched to Code Monkey shortly before you guys started up SSG. So I was SsimionKid76 for a long time on there, and then switched it up.
Okay. So when we started SSG, like I remember, you specifically were probably the first person that we, like, quote unquote, like, recruited. Like, is that kind of your recollection too, Code? Do you think that's similar?
Everyone before me was in that Allies for the Win group. So
Mm-hmm.
I had come, when I was in college, I was in another Halo gaming clan for a while, and about a year or two before you started SSG, that clan just fell apart when no one there wanted to move from Halo 2 to Halo 3.
Really?
Yeah. Well, some moved. They built their clan on doing custom game types in Halo 2. So it was all about the configuration, the options. They had a couple of the game types that we had come up with were, if you remember, Bungie did a couple different playlists near the last few years of Halo 2. And I think it was
Yeah, that's when they started doing the grab bag, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Action Sack playlist.
Action Sack, that's right. Oh, that was so much fun.
Most of those were our game types.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Dude, I played the shit out of those things. Just constant.
If you look up Real Custom Games was the name of the clan.
Real Custom Games. I'll have to check that out.
So that kind of went defunct. Their entire online presence was an IRC channel. So
Wow. No wonder they went defunct.
Yeah. And so after a while, I kind of just migrated over to the TTL forums and was picking up a few games here and there.
How'd you come across the TTL forums to begin with?
One of my friends, he was one of my neighbors. Remember, he was in SSG for a while, Big Nate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember Nate.
He knew from someone that he worked with. I can't remember, in one of his classes was a TTL guy, Bubble Cake.
Bubble Cake. Some of these
I mean,
names,
these names I'm pulling out of my head that I remember, but yeah.
That's awesome. So what if you were to compare? I know that obviously you've mentioned a number of differences between the two, but your experience as far as the clans themselves are concerned, the interconnectivity between the people, what's the difference between those? What would you say SSG has or doesn't have that the previous one did?
Standards, I guess.
Well, that's
well,
something.
no, I mean, in that other clan, it was just like, we have, in SSG, you've got the whole treat everyone with respect, be polite, and over there, just do whatever. If you offend someone, you offend someone. Work it out.
Yeah, some people like those rules more than others. Obviously some, and it's hard to enforce, and we'll get to it later, but, Code was also an overlord for a long time too. And so there's this weird balance where, the overlords and moderators, like we can't see and read and be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we'd see something and we'd enforce a rule, and other times we wouldn't. And so I understand how sometimes it looks punitive that we're, or inconsistent, right? We're sometimes enforcing a rule and sometimes not, but it's not out of malice or spite. It's just we can't see everything, and we forget the rules too sometimes, so, and a lot of it's a judgment call on some of the rules and what whoever sees it thinks at that time, right? So
yeah,
it's hard.
Everyone likes rules until they apply to them. As soon as the ban hammer's coming down on you for something you did, you're like, either you gotta, suck it up, apologize for what you did, or you just or people walk away.
Yeah.
And
yeah, well, we've seen that too.
Yeah. But I mean, it filters out after a while. Like, I've got another group outside of SSG I've been playing with since early Halo 2. A couple of those guys were in Real Custom Games. And yeah, everyone's fought, argued. But this group has weathered through that, and you work things out. And there's times where you hate each other, times where you're best friends. It comes and goes.
Oh, yeah. There's always an ebb and flow to a group, especially on online presence. So SSG as a whole. So you came through TTL, Allies for the Win, which most of these early podcasts that you're going to hear are going to be a very similar story as to how SSG was discovered. But from all your time at SSG, have you ever, okay, for starters, I know you've met a number of people, myself included, within the clan. How many people have you actually gotten an opportunity to meet?
Meet in person?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, I had a few that I knew in person that I brought in. Like, I've got my brother, Irish fighter, former member, Big Nate, came in. I met up at PAX. I met Jetstream. Now, what's his new gamer tag? Jet.
Yeah, he went back. He went to Black Knight, and then he went back to Jet.
He was Victor, and now he's Kazrael. Met him there. Right. I met a couple of TTL guys and old Spirits of Fire clan members there too when I was up at PAX. Let's see. I met Remy. I met you a few years ago.
Yeah, man. We went out to barbecue.
Yeah. My wife and I took a road trip down the California coast. So
that was cool.
Yep, that's what I want to do. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
Tell me when and where, man.
I was listening to that, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. I know. I can point you out all the different places you should stop by.
Yeah, man. You take the PCH straight north. Oh, love it.
We took it south. We came down from San Francisco.
I suppose that works too.
Let's see. A couple years ago, I took a road trip across country. Went to a lot of baseball games. Met J-Man in St. Louis. Met Nick. What's his gamer tag now? Deadeye. Him in South Carolina.
You didn't get to see Ghost Rider while you were in South Carolina?
I sent him up a text when I was driving through, but I guess schedules didn't align, and I was on a pretty tight schedule, city to city, on that road trip. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. How many people did you meet on just that trip?
In SSG, just those two.
Oh, okay.
Met a couple other friends. I mean, in the middle of that trip, I was stopping in Indianapolis for a Gen Con gaming convention.
So Gen Con, I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah, I switched up going to PAX. I was going to PAX every year for a while, and then after a while, it just got really hard to get tickets to that thing. So Gen Con was easy to grab tickets for. It's a board gaming convention, a lot more relaxed, sit down, hang out with friends.
Yeah, that's cool.
So when you're not sitting down and relaxing with friends, what do you have to do for a living to make some money?
I'm a software engineer, and I own my own software company. So we do payroll. So I was telling Remy this earlier. I do payroll software for the PEO industry, which, if you haven't heard of that, it's a really narrow market of PEO as professional employer organizations. They are companies that take on shared employer liability for small businesses and then run the payroll for them. But it exposes those small businesses to be able to get on, say, larger health benefit plans through that co-employment with the PEO. And our payroll software helps them manage that.
How did you end up in a field like that?
Now, I came out of college and just looking for a job, and I started working at this company. And so I started off as junior engineer and working up. And after a few years, company had some turnover. I became the lead developer. And about 2012, the owner decided he had a choice to make. He was either going to retire, he's going to retire. So it's either sell the company, just liquidate the assets. We all go find another job someplace else. Or what he decided to do is he let the company buy him out over the next 8 years. So so I was over development, and my partner now, he was over sales and support. And we basically took over as partners and took over the company, and over time paid it off, and now it's ours.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, I remember that transition. That's awesome.
Wow. So what did you go to school for? Was it specifically development, or what was your degree exactly?
Oh, initially I was going to school for electrical engineering. Growing up on a military base, my dad was an electrical engineer, and that's what I was going to do and learn the same thing. I was familiar with it, and then I got into one of those hardware classes, and I'm sitting there and I'm having to build a computer from scratch, like literally wiring the CPU into the memory chips, or wiring everything together, and I'm just like, this is not for me.
No, God, no.
And I had taken enough software classes towards that degree. It was an easy transition, so I shifted over to computer science, and that was a lot more enjoyable.
So how many employees do you guys have in your company?
We have 5, relatively small.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Easy to manage.
Yeah, we target our software as a on-premise solution. Not a lot of our biggest competitors do software as a service, and we're not hosting our clients' data. They just install their server. They have all their data on their site.
Huh. So is everything done remote then on your end?
Well,
or do you work with local companies?
No, we've got clients all over the country. We basically package our software and then deploy it, and then they install it on their network.
Interesting. How do you find time for gaming with all that? That sounds exhausting, honestly. That is way too high level for me.
I mean, especially lately with all the changes with this whole coronavirus and everyone wanting to get their small business loan so they call up their payroll provider and say, I need a report of all my payroll costs so I can go get my loan. And they want it all yesterday. So,
So how do you find time for your social life? I know you've got a family. I know you've got, time for gaming. How do you squeeze all that in?
I mean, you got to leave the work at work when you go home. So I try as much as possible to avoid, as a developer, I don't want to be in the support role of our company. Yeah. So my clients don't have my contact information.
Smart. Very smart.
Well, that's good. So he mentioned a little bit about your home life there. So I know I've seen pictures of some dogs I know that you've had and fostered and stuff like that. What kind of dogs do you have nowadays?
Right now we only have one dog. We have an Alaskan Malamute.
Ooh, love Malamutes.
A few years ago we had a German Shepherd that my brother's family, they moved across the country to Alabama, couldn't take their dog with them. And so we ended up taking her in, but she had a lot of genetic issues and problems and ended up having to be put down a few years ago.
That's terrible.
Yep, Huskies are definitely one of my favorite breeds, though. My neighbor across the street has one, and every time she's out, I'd instantly run out of the house to go see her.
See, after having a Malamute and meeting Huskies, I'm not sure I'd go with a Husky. They're way too energetic for me.
Yeah, Huskies are super
What's
energetic.
The size difference? I know there is one's bigger and one's
Malamutes
smaller,
are
right?
about I mean, Huskies generally run about 50, 60 pounds, and a Malamute's 100 to 125.
Okay.
So our dog's pretty big, right around 100, but she's getting up there in age, not as energetic as she used to be. So,
Aren't we all?
yep.
Oh, I understand that. So you're primarily playing these days, to switch the conversation a little bit back to gaming. You're primarily on Xbox still, correct?
Yeah, I try to play all Xbox, even though I just did build a brand new PC. Haven't really gotten a feel for any PC games that I'm wanting to jump into too much. Although I keep going back to my Diablo game. I've played that for the last 25 years ish. So every new computer I
Was that
get,
all?
every new PC I get, it's like, well, I guess I got to play Diablo for a while.
Sounds like Mike with The Witcher.
Oh yeah.
So you stick to Xbox mostly. What's your go-to game, either type or game specifically?
It depends if I'm playing with friends. Usually it's a shooter, multiplayer. Um, Mostly it's been the Call of Duty series. I'll jump in a little bit Battlefield or Halo every now and then, but Call of Duty's been the go-to. Um, when it's just me, I tend to stick to single-player RPGs, mostly
Huh.
Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect. Haven't really gotten into The Witcher. But,
So I've never played through the Mass Effect series.
oh, you're missing out.
I've heard that.
Are you a Star Wars fan?
Oh yeah, love it.
It's basically a video game space opera.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty damn good selling point.
Well, and BioWare is so good about. I think all of the games code haven't they had like the choice, like the different outcomes and all that kind of stuff with the dialogue, and has that been in there since the beginning?
Yeah, I mean they've always done the you know good bad dialogue options throughout your game. One of their first games was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and that
Oh, I
was
didn't realize they had made that.
yeah they did that one, and then Obsidian did the sequel to it. But so then
Hmm.
they wanted to break off after doing Knights of the Old Republic and do their own story, so they did Mass Effect as that. And the first one had that still felt a little bit like the turn-based RPG that Knights of the Old Republic was, where you could queue up your different options. But they
See, and that's why I always kind of avoided it. I thought that was the case throughout.
no, it switched very to more of a third-person cover-based shooter into the second and
Hmm.
third one.
So can I start with the second and continue to the third?
You can. I mean, with the second one, they give a really nice little intro that you can pick your choices that you would have made in the first one. They give like a little interactive comic book thing,
Ah.
so you can. They tell you the story. What did you pick here? What did you pick here? So you can set
Well,
up your
shit, that
backstory.
settles it. All right, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna play them.
Well, and I think I know I've only really played one and two, but I know like two and three you could import your character and stuff too.
Yeah, well, all of them you could import your character from one to the next. And so with 1 to 2, there was a pretty big graphical change. And so your characters didn't always look the same, but from 2 to 3, it was really consistent. And you'd pick your game save, and you finish the game, and then right after you make that final end game decision, that would lock your save in, so you could import from there.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool feature. I like when games have like that kind of continuity. Like if you have accomplished something, achieved something, or you spend a lot of time, and then you can, you get that reward of keeping that whatever it is. I remember playing Perfect Dark on the 64, the original Perfect Dark. There was
Yeah.
in one of the levels you're on an airplane, and if you opened like um, like one of the doors it's not a door, it's like a trap door on the floor. If you open it, there was like a jet ski or some kind of vehicle on this platform. When you open the platform, if you opened it, the next level you were able to use that vehicle, which was pretty cool. Like, and it wasn't obvious by doing it that you would have any chance to do anything with it later in the game. But if you did it, then you'd unlock it later in the game, which you wouldn't have it otherwise. So things like that I like little Easter eggs or cool little hidden things like that.
Yeah, the Mass Effect series did a lot of that with just even the side stories in the game. You meet and talk to this one little annoying side character in the first game, and he's kind of annoying to you, and he'll show up in the second game again in a little bit annoying side story, and then he shows up in the third, and now he's turned to, by the third game, you're like, he's an endearing character that you want to help out. But in the first one, he's just like an annoying fan. That, of your character.
So what was your first console, Code?
First console,
Yeah.
probably an Atari 2600.
Nice.
Yep, that was mine.
That's going back to childhood when my dad bought that. And, that's like, hey, sit down and 2-player play asteroids or
Pong.
something.
There you go.
Now, the one I remember, the game on that was always combat with the tanks.
Yep.
That's one I never played.
Yeah, I just remember having one, and I remember like the room it was hooked up in, and sitting on the floor and playing with it because you had like a 1-foot cord on the controller.
Yeah.
And but I don't remember any specific games other than maybe like Asteroids or something like that. I'm sure we had like Asteroids and Pac-Man and things like that,
and Pong. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, but tanks, the tanks game, I do remember playing that.
And I remember we had the infamous E.T. game too, the one that was horrible.
Ooh,
Classic.
what was so did they do a documentary or something on that fairly recently?
Yeah,
It's like there's a whole bunch buried in the desert or something like ridiculous.
They made so many copies of the game, and then it just didn't sell at all. And so they had warehouses full of these game cartridges. And so they just, after a while, drove out in the desert, just dug a hole and buried them in a landfill.
I mean, what else are you gonna do with them? I guess. But
So I think
Yeah.
in the documentary, they went out and figured out where in the landfill they buried it, and they dug it up and found them.
Someone's
my
got
gosh.
nothing better to do with their
Nope.
time. So,
Although
in all the years of your gaming,
Uh-huh.
from the Atari to now, what is your proudest achievement? Whether it's an actual achievement like an Xbox achievement or something you've done that is just very difficult to do, and you that's just your proudest moment in gaming, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Probably it's a group effort here, but it was in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, playing multiplayer with friends, and those games were always team deathmatch, 75 kills to win, and we won a match 75-1.
Holy hell!
with a full team.
Yep.
Wouch! That is demoralizing for the other team.
Yeah, but as a team, we reveled in that.
Well, naturally.
Yeah, I mean that's like getting a sports shutout essentially. I mean like, and something like in baseball or something like pitching a perfect game almost.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we still haven't hit the 75-0 ever, but still.
You weren't
trying
that
for
one kill, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, good.
But in a game like that, it comes down to rationing. You can't. You're not running around the map, picking up guns from the guys you killed because you'll die if you do that. So it
Right.
comes down to picking the right guns and right ammo. And
That's awesome.
I totally forgot that those games were to 75, but it wasn't. It's not 1-1, is it? I mean, there was something. Don't you get like more? Don't you get points for assists or points?
you get points, but it only counted kills towards its end game score.
Oh, so it was still 75 actual kills.
Uh-huh.
That's how they do it. Okay, yeah, it's been a while since I played an actual Call of Duty multiplayer match, or at least one of the classic types like that.
That's always something when you're playing that, you don't realize it's that special game until you're like, guys, we're up like 60-0. Don't
Shh,
die.
don't say anything.
Yeah, that.
You jinx it.
Mm-hmm. So what? So other than gaming, what are some of your big hobbies that you like to do? With yourself or with friends?
Board games is probably what it comes down to. Me and my wife will go play board games a lot with some friends around here. So I've built up over the last few years a pretty sizable tabletop board game collection.
Any particular favorites?
Yeah, my favorite board game, it's probably one that, you don't typically think, but it's based off a TV show. You remember the Spartacus TV show on Stars?
I do.
So yeah, it's a game based off of that, and Gale Force 9 designed this game, and the nice thing about it is that you're always involved in the game, and they've got an entire like gladiator combat arena phase of the game, and even if you're not in the gladiator arena fighting, you're betting, doing side bets on who you think's going to win, who's going to decapitate someone.
That's badass.
We'll have game nights here, and that game, if you play it from start to finish, it can easily take 4 or 5 hours to play.
Perfect. I love a game like that.
I have still yet to do any of the tabletop stuff, but my impression is they're all generally pretty long, aren't they? I mean, maybe not that long, but
No, it depends on the game. Like, there's a lot more like smaller games. Like, there's a game I like to play called Coup, C-O-U-P,
Oh, great
That's
game.
a quick card game. You know, it can play up to 10 people, and it takes 5 minutes to play through the game.
Yeah.
So we'll just play
That's
that
a great
over and
one.
over. And it's just a bluffing game.
What is in a little bit off topic maybe, but in the what's the Netflix series with the kids and the
Stranger
aliens and all
Things.
that stuff? Yeah,
Stranger Things.
do they play? Is it just Dungeons and Dragons they play, or is it just some made up?
No,
thing
that's
that they
that's
actually
straight
play
up
in that game?
That's
D&D.
just straight, old school D&D.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where they get all the monster names and everything.
The
Mind Flayer,
Demogorgon.
the Demogorgon. Yep, I pronounced that wrong, but yeah.
So those are all like legit names, like from classic like Dungeons and Dragons, or that stuff that they make up.
Yeah, that's all from
No, those are
classic,
legit.
like D&D 2.0, 1.0.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, see, maybe it would have been cooler if I would have known that, or you know.
Yeah. So Jay, you've never played any D&D or any kind of tabletops?
No,
That
I mean,
surprises
you
me.
know, well, not for any necessarily lack of interest or not wanting to do it, just that I think like my formative years, you know, when probably a lot of us would have done it, you know, like the Stranger Things type stuff. I didn't have any friends that were into it, or that had anything. You know, even just growing up, period. I never had any friends that played, so I didn't have any of the exposure locally to do it. And I mean, obviously now within SSG, there's plenty of online ways to do it and stuff like that, and plenty of people within it that play. And I should definitely
I
like
mean, you got kids.
check it out.
You can play with your kids.
Dude, we
Yep.
should absolutely set up an SSG D&D game.
I mean, I never had board games a lot really growing up. I mean, my family had Monopoly and Sorry, but you know, those are those are horrible games.
Yeah.
Like from a game
Monopoly,
design
if
standpoint,
you hate your
Monopoly is
family.
like the worst game out there.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Not good.
I won't even I can't even play that with my wife. She destroys me.
I mean, the entire point of that game is to just, you know, you're trying to kick everyone else out of the game.
Yeah, screw everybody over.
But I mean, yeah, I lost interest in a lot of games where they have like player elimination. So, you know, if we're playing and someone gets kicked out of the game, they got to sit and watch the rest of everyone play. I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore.
My favorites are always either the co-op games where you're fighting against the game itself, the lying games like Coop is one night of what is that, werewolf, one night of werewolf.
Yeah.
And like games like Munchkin. Those are always those to me the more inventive kind of unique twists on classic ideas.
You got a current theme game there. You could play Pandemic,
There you go.
current events. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, as we record this, we are still in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, or you know, epidemic that is everywhere. So
Yeah. It'll come up a few times in the next few podcasts, I assure you.
yes, so hopefully we'll have time to get some more podcasts out with everybody being home. Or
We're
Yeah,
doing 2 this
we'll
week. It'll be great.
You know, we've actually started trying to play board games with my nieces and nephews across the country in Alabama over just a webcam. So we'll set up like a camera pointed down at our table.
That's
We'll
awesome.
play like Settlers
cool.
of Catan with them. They set up a table on their end so it matches the exact same table.
That's awesome. I love it.
Nice.
So seriously, SSG D&D has to happen.
Yep. If you guys are ready to walk me through everything.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I've never actually played. I just happen to know a lot about it.
Ah, I see.
D&D,
A true nerd at heart.
yeah, D&D
That's
comes
right.
down to having a good GM, someone who can really get into it.
We can.
I think we know a couple of those.
recruit Frank or John or we have so
Toma.
many. Toma, that's right. Yeah, we got a lot that can do that, no doubt. So, Code, having grown up on a small island, which is, you said it was a U.S. territory or outside the U.S., right?
It's a U.S. It was a military base in the Marshall Islands.
Okay. So it sounds like you're reasonably well traveled across the world then. I mean, or is it just that and then the U.S.?
And I've been there into Europe, so
Okay. Where would you go if you could go anywhere?
if I could go anywhere
Yeah. What's your dream destination?
permanently or just to visit,
Now, let's start with visit and then go permanent.
I'd want to visit Antarctica.
Oh shit, I like that. You know what? I do too. I was listening to a podcast about a very similar thing not too long ago. Why Antarctica?
You could get down there and pick a direction, and you could walk somewhere where you're reasonably sure no other human has been.
That's so badass.
Yeah.
Almost everywhere else in the world you go, it's like, well, someone's been here at least. So
Yeah, probably a lot of someone's.
Yeah, me and the kids were just talking about Antarctica the other day because we were talking about one of the. I guess we were talking about all the continents. We're with all this with the COVID-19 and staying home. Obviously, the kids are home, no school, and so we've been doing all the homeschooling. We were talking about the continents, and it came up with Antarctica, and we were talking about how nobody was there. And the kids were like, "Oh, well, I want to go there." I was like, "Yeah, but it's like mostly ice. I don't know if it's somewhere you want to be. Like, there's no buildings. There's not really any electricity, internet. You wouldn't have much to do." Even once you got there, and obviously it's really cold. And they were like, "Yeah, that doesn't sound fun." I'm like, "No, not to go stay, but definitely as a place to go check out and visit. Like Code was saying, would be pretty cool to go just experience it, right?"
Yeah.
For sure. So what about living? If you were to live anywhere, could be right where you are.
Actually, I'd probably want to live on a tropical island out in the Western Pacific.
Okay.
Someplace where, I mean, growing up out there is like we didn't have. Obviously, it was still before the internet, but even then, when the internet came out, it was like, well, we had dial-up from the base building. It was like, I was never attached to that. Television, we had 2 channels that didn't have anything to watch.
And that's the way to grow up too. I grew up very similarly.
You don't really
It
get
was
attached to that, and so I know what that's like, and I wouldn't mind going back to that.
Love it.
Even as
Yeah,
a software engineer, it's like I deal with computers all day, and like, yeah, I'd give it up any day.
Oh, in a heartbeat.
See, I've always been, with as much that I do with computers professionally and personally, like I can say typically I don't come home or get home from a job or from working and get tired of it or sick of it. Like I'm still, like I know a lot of people now. Again, I don't have to work in front of a screen for 8-10 hours a day. It's always something I can do kind of at typically at my leisure, and it's not something I'm stuck doing for several hours like that. But I never come home and want to just take a complete break from screens or the internet or anything like that. But I can tell I'm definitely in the minority where most people just want to take that break. And
I don't think it's that I'm tired of it or want to give it up, but it's like I know what life is like without it, and it's not that bad.
Simple.
So if you were on this tropical island, let's say you're there visiting, or even if you ended up living somewhere like that, what would you want to have with you? Like if you could bring, let's say you were there and you were living there, what's one of the things you'd have to bring? You're like, I can't be without this. If it was a favorite book or game or movie or.
Not a lot. I really don't know what I would have to have with me.
No specific books that you've read 1,000 times or.
Not really. Books for me are usually a one-time read. I've tried to reread books, and it's just I get 2 chapters in, like I remember the whole plot. I'm good.
Bring like your Settlers of Catan or something with you, so you'd always have something to.
As long as there are other people.
Yeah, if there's other people to play with, yeah, I guess.
That'd be a really boring game by yourself.
I win again.
Oh man. So on that similar note, everybody's got one, whether they say they do or not. But what's your guilty pleasure TV show, movie, game? What are you not keen to divulge right out the gate?
Guilty pleasure?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, nothing you're embarrassed to say that you, I watched that entire TV show, or I read the Twilight books, or I don't know. I'm just.
I didn't read those, no.
Remy did, apparently.
I actually did, yeah. No, nothing?
Yeah, I just can't think of too much stuff yeah. I mean, there's stuff I enjoy that probably most other people don't. Like, I actually like sitting down and watching baseball games.
I wouldn't have guessed that about you. I mean, to be fair, we don't know each other wonderfully well or anything, but I never would have pegged you for a baseball guy.
Yeah, during the summers, pretty much, I'll come home from work, turn on the baseball game, and that'll be on for the next 3 or 4 hours.
So who's your favorite team then, or teams?
I'm a glutton for punishment. I like the Oakland A's. Perennially bad.
Sounds like my football team. Just watch them lose over and over again, but you still love them.
Yep, every time they get a good player, got to trade them away.
See, I don't have that same problem. We just get good players, and they come down to our level.
So, we talked about briefly, or we had mentioned, you had a stint, obviously, in SSG in the leadership position as an overlord. Is that something, have you been in a position like that before with clans or communities where you've, been in charge or run them before?
I hadn't, no. I think I approached it more just from the organizational standpoint of, keeping things running, events happening, following the rules, implementing the policies, and after a while that just gets tiring.
Yeah.
So if anyone asked me to do it again, I would just say no thank you.
See, it's so hard to find good help, but like like you were saying, you were that surprises me because you were such a natural fit for it. I think that's when at the time when we were looking for somebody, I don't even think it really appeared to be a question. Like you were almost already doing the job, and then it was kind of like, hey, let's offer this position because it seemed like you'd be so good at it, right? Like and I think you definitely were. Like when you were here, all the policies, like you were saying, like you helped with make policies, write policies, change policies, fix all my spelling mistakes. Like there was a lot of things that I think SSG greatly benefited from you in that role. So
For sure, yeah, you were a natural, 100%.
Thanks, but I think sometimes when it comes to like communities like that, just learning through that process is it can't be forced. Like it has to grow organically, and I was more in the position of, well, we've decided we're going to do it this way, so let's make that happen, even though that may not have been the organic solution that it was going to happen that way.
Yeah, and I think SSG has learned that time and time again, where like I was saying, how we kind of came to with us wanting to have you on in a leadership role, where anytime we've had any kind of like a staff role or leadership role come up, or we want to make a new one, it 100% works better if it's organic, right? Like if the people were already essentially doing that job already, and then we just quote unquote like make it official, right?
Yeah.
Like before it was ever a position, like Dalcaeus, he was our first like community staff member, the community Templar that really just did outreach. Like they went to other communities and tried to get mixers and tried to get just tried to stir up activities within SSG and then SSG and other communities. What not necessarily competitive, just fun game nights. Much like how even today, like OCR does a lot of Halo nights and things like that. And so he was already doing that job. Like that's just his personality. Like he was just going out and talking to other clans and trying to get things organized and just trying to have fun gaming nights and sessions and bring people on. And so we're like, hey, let's just give him this role and make that role around him, right? Not try to design a role and then find somebody for it.
That makes sense. And he did a great job at it.
I mean, that works, and then until that person decides they want to change sometimes, and then you get the next person tries to step into their shoes, right? And then it turns into not an organic process for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There's pros and cons to trying to force something to happen. I've seen communities out there where they're very rigid, like, no, this is how we do it. If you're in here, you follow these rules, you do it this way. And if you don't like it, you leave, and they have high turnover. But the ones that are there are doing it. And then you get other clans who are or even just friends. You're just a group of friends. Like sometimes we play this game, sometimes we don't, but everyone's enjoying it.
Yeah, and we've gone through that. As a community, we're at one point we just had so many just staff members and leadership people. Like we've never had more than 5 people in leadership, but we had a bunch of probably when you were there, Code and leadership, where we just had so many different what we would call the Templars, which was our staff.
Yeah, I remember when we created that, it was like, well, we've got 5 overlords, so let's add 5 or 6 Templars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, half the clan was.
And you've only got like 25 members. Like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And at half the time, it felt like, well, we need want this person to feel like they're important, so let's come up with something for them to manage. I don't know.
Yeah, that's when it doesn't work. If
Yeah,
you're coming up with jobs.
Yeah, and it would work for a little bit. Somebody would do it, but it's hard, right? Because it's, I think, is definitely is, as I've found out, and anybody else that's been in a leadership position here, or really in anything like a nonprofit or something else that you're not really getting paid for, right? Like any kind of community thing.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Like definitely I go through downturns where I'm sure there's something I could be doing management wise inside of SSG, right? But it's like I forget, or I'm busy with my other two jobs and family and everything else, and since obviously there is no paycheck and there's no schedule for anything really. We're just luckily SSG maintains itself, right? Most people police themselves and maintain themselves, and until big changes or issues or things happen, right? Like then that's usually when we step up and step in to have big discussions and things like that. Like really, like the last big thing that we had to do was this change to Discord.
Yeah.
So with the change to Discord, I mean that set a whole bunch of stuff in motion, right? Because there was a lot of pushback because a lot of people wanted to stay on the forums, or because right around this time too was it was right after the transition essentially to like the Xbox One and the PS4 and all that had already happened a little bit, but there was a fracturing of game systems and games, and so the community was already a little divided on what game, because we went from always playing Halo 3 on the Xbox, and now we're going to switch Halo or Call of Duty, type games, but pretty much everybody was on the Xbox. Then we switch console generations. Some people go different ways, and then there's not really any unifying game anymore, and then we throw something like this into the mix.
How do you stay in touch, right? When everyone's, no one's, used to be, Halo, when I first started on Xbox, it was like I could turn on Halo 2, and all my friends were in Halo 2. Didn't matter.
Right, you wouldn't see a different game on.
And then even SSG, when that started, it was Halo 3. You could get on and like every single night, just, hey, there's 35 of my friends online, hit up, send a friend invite, or send a, game invite, or a message that just says, hey, give me an invite when you got a spot.
Yeah, I miss there being a cohesive game amongst the clan.
But yeah, I mean, I remember when we were on the forums only, and people are like, well, we want to add a chat functionality to give this like real time. I don't want to post a message because it's not really that important for a permanent record to be there. So we added a chat, I remember, at the top for a while, and then I guess we went to Slack for a little bit, trying to figure
Totally forgot about that.
Figure out what was the best real-time chat platform. And I had done IRC before, and that, IRC is its own headache trying to explain to someone who's not computer tech savvy how to connect to it. I mean, Discord, I think, is where the entire gaming community's gone towards, and so it's a good transition.
Well, yeah, and it's got so many features built in that we can so easily use. Like right now, we're chatting on Discord chat to record this podcast.
I mean, the biggest advantage of Discord is it's free.
That's pretty huge, and very customizable. You got a lot of plugins and everything you can play with.
Yeah, it is very nice, and having the switch to Discord and having all of the real-time communication has been nice. And we've internally we've discussed this to death with on the forums before we left, and then since we've been on Discord. But there is just something I just love the forums. I just love the layout of them. I love the visual appeal and like the way you can reply to comments and you can see things in context, and if you were gone for a week, you could still catch up reasonably easy. Where on Discord, if you're gone for like a day, sometimes there could be a channel, then you're just like, well, you just call bankruptcy on it, because you're not going to catch up and read necessarily everything that's in there. Especially, I mean, and ours isn't super active, but there's a couple other that that I'm involved in, and they're just crazy active, and it's like, man, there's no way I could keep up.
Well, yeah.
No, it's absolutely impossible.
I mean, your forums are the equivalent of a newspaper, and Discord's the equivalent of the radio. You don't turn on your radio and expect to catch up on the last 3 days worth of radio.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that's been one of my biggest struggles with the switch to Discord is trying to make sure or try to go through and not necessarily archive, but be able to find things again. And it has a great search function. That's not necessarily the problem, but I try to go through and pen items and things like that so I can go back and find them. And I've even gone back recently and made posts on the forums, like in some of our internal admin boards, just so because I know it's a spot that I know that I can find it. So it's still easier for me to find things on the forums sometimes and just like make a note or keep a record of something that happened.
Yeah, it certainly has its both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I'm probably, as a day-to-day usage, I'm more fond of the forums, but Discord makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I in a perfect world, I'd still like to have both. You know,
Yeah.
But as we saw, I think the move to Slack and then the move to Discord, by and large, is one of the big reasons that saved SSG as a group. I think had we not made that move, and we did it fairly early. I feel like looking at some of the other groups where we at least integrated it partway, and then we went full on board with Discord. But we did get a lot of pushback and a lot of rebuttal about people that didn't want to leave the forums and things like that. And again, like I totally get it because I love the forums. But I think that is something that when we made that transition to the real-time communication, because then one of the biggest problems with the forums was most people's usage was on their smartphone, and people didn't really want to get on the forums because it really wasn't optimized really well. I mean, forums, it's just hard period for forums to be optimized for a smartphone.
For sure.
And so, it just wasn't, it wasn't working well on smartphones. And so, and you didn't have any of the real-time stuff, right? So now on Discord, we have all the communication. We have, you got push notifications so people can, you can DM people, you can tag people, you can do all that kind of stuff. And so I think that really helped save SSG as a group. I think had that not happened, I think people, we would have still been around in some capacity potentially now. And I think people would still play with people who they're friends with and all that kind of stuff. There wouldn't have been any like bad blood necessarily, but I'm glad we made that move.
That's kind of how it was happening near the end of the forums. Is people started breaking up in their own little cliques that they didn't necessarily play with people they weren't super familiar with because they didn't have time or didn't have the desire to go to the forums to fill it out. Now
Right.
I feel like it's a little more cohesive.
And it seems like people are switching. With Discord, it's one of those things where it really gets its value by just if you're always signed into it. Like it's on my phone all the time. If someone tags me, I'm gonna see it within a few minutes, typically.
Right.
Whereas it used to be like the forums, someone could send me a message. I'm not gonna see it for maybe a day or two if I don't sign into the forum. And when we first switched to Slack and Discord, yeah, but when we first switched to Slack and Discord, it felt like people were still using those same habits from forums, where it's like, oh, I opened up Slack, I checked, I read, and then I closed it down. Or I opened up Discord, I read it, and I closed it down.
Okay.
And so you could tag them, like they're still not going to see it until they sign in again. But I've noticed now more and more, you come in and, you go to other communities and you can see like, oh, how many people are signed in? Like 95 people are in their Slack or in their Discord. And it's like now ours is growing more and more. Like we've got 13 people signed into Discord right now, 13 knights and 11 people from other clans. So it's like you've got these people always ready you can tag them if you wanted.
Yeah, I think just in general, I think a lot of people are they're having to use or getting more comfortable with these platforms, right? You got, like we said, Slack, Discord, Microsoft Teams. People are using these platforms more just for work and or personal stuff, and so they're becoming a lot more comfortable with it. As before, people didn't really understand what they were or how they worked, and so now we're over that hump and people understand what it is, and so I think it's easier to get everybody involved. And we've had this awesome renaissance of finding all of the other Good Game Network clan Discords. So I mean that has been amazing. Like Code, you just said, there's 10 plus people from other communities that are online. and again, they're not necessarily in our Discord. They're just online in Discord. But it's nice because we could ping them if we needed to go play Halo or Call of Duty or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and, we could, if we needed to recruit some people for a game. So that's what makes it really cool. And so it's been nice to have that,
reconnection.
yeah, this big reconnection of back and forth, right? So we've gone to a whole bunch of other communities, and we've had a bunch of people from different communities come into SSG, which it's been really cool. It's been good to see some old faces and old voices, and just have a lot more people to play with.
That just reminded me of something when I bought my last house back in like 2014, 2013-ish. I had a neighbor moved in, and he was over at my house, and we were having dinner or something, and I turned on my Xbox, showing him what games I had, and he looked at my gamer tag. He's like, SSG Code Monkey, Sword and Shield Gaming? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, my gamer tag's BSG Ender. like he had been in our forums at the time, and he recognized the name, and it was just funny that he had moved up from Arizona and ended up living right around the corner from me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fantastic. Well, gentlemen, we are rapidly approaching our hour. Mr. Code or Simeon, do you want to leave the listeners with anything? Any plugs that you're working on, any projects or anything like that?
Not really.
No?
If you see me online, ping me if you want to play Call of Duty or Diablo 3. I'm always up for that.
Sounds good. We'll have to get some games in soon, man. It's been a long time.
Yep.
Cool. All right, well,
guys. Well,
thank
thanks a
you,
lot.
gentlemen, very much. That was it was good to get to know you a little bit better there, Code.
Same. Sounds good.
All right, you gentlemen have an awesome evening, and viewers, thank you for listening.